All right, let's start. So nice to meet you all here. It's great that we have some time to talk about design tokens. So actually, someone of you heard about design tokens already. Are you familiar with the concept? That's perfect, because I decided to make this a beginner-friendly course. So you don't need to know anything about design tokens because you will learn it. And let's start. First, I'm Nils. I'm a freelance design system consultant with background in front-end development and UI UX design. And I also host a little meetup called Dev and Design, where we also talk about topics like these. What you can see here actually is me, I think in 2023, giving this talk, and it was recorded, and I was told, please stand in the yellow circle and don't leave it. And actually, most of the recording, you can see my hands sometimes, but most of the time, actually, you cannot see anything. So, that was me giving this talk. And that's probably why it's called 2025 edition. So I updated it. There's a new chapter about theming, aliasing. So yeah, that's the idea behind it. All right. It will be a longer talk, actually. I'll try to make it not too long. We will have time for some questions in between, questions afterwards. And if you have any questions after this day, feel free to get in touch over mail or LinkedIn. So I'm happy to provide answers on this topic. All right, and this talk is called The Evolution of Design Tokens. And that's why we travel back in history all the way to the early days of the web, to the 1990s. I didn't work on the web in that time, so I know this from articles, but I hope, I think this is true. So in 1990, the first web browser was released, and CSS actually, you cannot imagine, but CSS did not exist back then. So there was no official way of styling websites in the early days of the web. And that's actually how the first website looked like. Not properly really fancy, but it worked and delivered the content. All right, so, and the way you could style a website, one way would be to use presentational elements and attributes. And as you can see here, these are the elements. This one creates a multi-column element. This one is an attribute for the columns. So we actually solved this in the HTML. This was only one way. There were others. So the pro was actually we could style our HTML documents, but there were many cons. So lots of repetition because we had to use these elements over and over again, and we had to assign these attributes. Also, we didn't have separation of contents, so the structure was dealt in the HTML, but also the presentation. So, but then CSS came to the rescue. In 1996, we got the gift of CSS. And CSS came with two really powerful features, inheritance and classes. There were more features, but those are really interesting ones as regards to this talk. So you might be familiar with the concept, but I think it's really powerful, actually, the concept of inheritance. So what this means, I can declare my styles, for example, on the body tag, and all child elements will inherit the color and the font family. So we can see it here. I change the font family to a serif font, and all child elements change. Same is true for the color, so I can tweak it. And this would be true for hundreds and thousands of documents. I have global control just from my body tag about the look of all these child elements. And we also got classes. So for some reason, the MacBook still appears here. I don't know why. Okay, we have classes. So you're also familiar with classes. So I define my class once, and hopefully a button will look like a button. So I can reuse classes on many different occurrences in my markup. All right, so what did we win? Now we have global control on our styles by inheritance and reusable classes. So this saves us time and effort, and it may improve at least the consistency. And now we also got separation of conscience. So we're taking care about the presentation in our CSS now and not in the HTML document anymore. So that's nice. We shifted the responsibility from HTML to CSS. We're now distributing our styles via CSS down to the markup. All right, but there were still cons because at that time values were still hard-coded. So if you have a look at this hex color code, I think most of you won't have any clue what kind of color it is. I heard there are people who can read this, but I cannot. So values are hard-coded and not named, so this made inconsistencies more likely. And yeah, as I mentioned, draw values, they don't speak to you. So you have no idea what this value is all about. Also, not all properties can be inherited. It's mostly about font-related stuff and colors. All right. So modern CSS to the rescue. So in 2006 already, SAS brought us variables, and later on, around 2016, CSS custom properties or native CSS variables were introduced. So that was a major step. So this means we can define actually our values globally and reuse those values throughout a project. And there's another benefit, we can name our values. So now what we can do, this is not really semantic yet, but you have already a clue that this is a gray color tone, and the scale probably also tells you that this one is lighter than this one, which is already nice. We could also give our custom properties a more semantic name. We could call it text primary, which even speaks in a more meaningful way to us. So that might be even be self-documenting at least, and if you compare this with a hex color code, I think this is an improvement in regards to collaboration and also our future self, who knows what this is all about. So ensure cross-referencing, one custom property can point to another one, and so we get theming capabilities right inside CSS. So a dark mode, for example, is really, really easily accomplishable, I would say. All right, so now we have a single source of truth. And so our code is more dry, we have less manual work, more consistency, but more importantly, we have an added semantic meaning because we can name our values now in a meaningful way. That's probably the most important thing here. And how did we achieve that? So now we shifted the responsibility for values to project-wide variables, and we reference those values, but, and that's important, if we talk about design tokens, we're still in one single platform, in a web platform. But yeah, we reference our values and reuse them in a project. So, and here we are. So first website, HTML only, then CSS in 1996. SAS brought us variables, CSS custom properties with many more advantages. I just picked up a few here. And also stuff like utility CSS, CSS and JS happened afterwards. But at the same time, there were major other transformations happening. So we started actually from desktop only, and we're now in a multi-device universe with even smart fridges, smart watches, car OS and stuff like that. So an infinite number of devices, screen sizes, and that's something that also happened in that time frame. And also we went from informational static website to highly interactive web apps such as Figma, for example. Yeah. So these were major changes happening, and here's an example by Spotify. At 2015, their goal was to change the color of their green tone from this warmer green to a cooler one, and this took them several months actually. It was manual work involved. It was a real pain for them from what I read. That's one of the challenges where design tokens can be of help. And 3 years later, actually, they already had 45 different platforms, 22 different design systems, 200 designers and 2,000 developers. So updating this manually was not an option anymore. So we'll see how they solved this at a later point. And this is an interface inventory taken by Brad Frost. He is a design system expert. You might have heard of him. And he did this inventory for Condé Nast, and it turned out all these buttons existed for the same brand, and they look slightly different. So probably the color is different, the font family might be different, you have an increased letter spacing on one of these. So this is what happens if you have multiple teams, departments, if you have to deal with car as fridges and other channels. So this can happen. Another example is this by Lyft. So it turned out they also did some kind of internal inventory, and they had 15 different variants of a similar pink tone. And sometimes you can see there's a difference, sometimes you can't even see there's a difference. And also the names slightly differ. Here it's probably called 500, another dev or designer called it 700. So these inconsistencies are problems that can occur if you work with multiple teams, if you have to target multiple channels, and that's something design tokens try to solve. All right, so the drawbacks until now, when we didn't have design tokens actually, was efficiency was an issue. So keeping your design in sync manually across different platforms is really time intensive and may lead to errors. Also, an alignment between teams is difficult because, as we've seen here, if all these different names exist, you don't have a common language. So if one team calls it Pink 1 and the other one Pink 500, misunderstandings are definitely more likely. And this is from a developer point probably an issue, or from a business perspective, but we also have UX implications. So inconsistencies are more likely, and they may lead to more cognitive load, and it may also dilute your brand perception. In some, you might have a poor user experience in the end. All right, but now we come to the fun part, because design tokens were invented, and they were already an idea in 2014. And they try to solve some of the issues I just mentioned. So the promise is keep the visual design across tools and stack automatically in sync, and also align different teams by establishing a shared source of truth for your design decisions. So, all right. That was the history part. Now let's try to define design tokens. Actually, I wanted to start with a question: who has used tokens? But I already asked you who's familiar with it. So I think most of you haven't used design tokens in a real project. So, and that's great, because we're here to start with the real basics here. Okay, one history slide again. Gina Ann, she was the one who coined the term in 2014. She was working for the Salesforce Lightning design system team, and their goal was to scale a design across different platforms. And yeah, she came up with the term actually. And the thing is, there is no official standard. So when I'm talking about design tokens, and when I will show you how it looks like, I refer to the W3C Design Token Community Group. So they're working towards a standard, but it's not an official standards track. So, but I'm really confident, and you can see some pretty big companies are working in that group towards a standard, like Adobe, Amazon, Atlassian, Figma, Google, Microsoft, and others. So, and as you can also see, Gina Ann, who coined the term, is still working on a standard. So we have no standard, but I think we will get one, which will be a good thing. All right. So, but let's have a look at the definition, the simple definition of the W3C working community group. A design token is information associated with a name, at minimum a name value pair. All right. So let's have a look at a design token. So that's probably the minimal configuration of a design token. So you have a name and you have a value, and it's typically JSON. So here you can see it gets a real name, for example, like text primary, and this value, which is a hex color code. So that's a token in its simplest form, but I think this definition is a little bit boring. So let me read out loud a more complicated one. Design tokens are methodology for expressing design decisions in a platform-agnostic way so that they can be shared across different disciplines, tools, and technologies. They help establish a common vocabulary across organizations. That's the long definition, and it's actually not too complicated if we cut it down into its individual pieces. So we'll now have a look at what design decisions are actually, what platform agnostic means, and how you could share design tokens across disciplines, tools, and technology. And we'll also have a look at what common vocabulary actually means. All right. What are design decisions? So design decisions are actually your core, your most important decisions about your visual language. So it's about color choices, it's about typography, font families, probably the width of your lines, what kind of icons you use, all that. To make it more concrete, so it would be, if we have this button, your choice of background color, the color of the font itself, the typeface, font size, and stuff like that. I used mostly CSS here, but definitely it's not about the web, it's about also native apps and stuff like that. So, but I hope you get the point that it's about your core design decisions and your visual language. I think, yeah, Brad Frost, who came up with the atomic design methodology, I think he puts it really nicely. He says design decisions or design tokens are subatomic particles. They're the smallest pieces of your design. So small, repeatable design decisions would also be a definition of design tokens. All right, but here we're not only talking about design decisions, we're talking about named design decisions. So here's a design decision, but it's not named. It doesn't speak to us. And that's what we like to avoid, as I told you in the first chapter. We like to name it. So for example, I could name it text accent, and it immediately speaks to us. It provides semantic meaning in that case. So another interesting way to think about it, I think Romina Kavcic put it like that. It's like applying nicknames to your design decisions. That would be another way to describe design tokens. So we name them. And it's not only about colors, but actually most of the time you will deal with colors when talking about design tokens, because this opens up many possibilities for theming, as we'll see. But it's also about font sizes, for example. It's about your border radius and all other attributes that describe your visual language. All right, and here's another UI example. So I didn't add all design tokens. Also, I made up these names. But as you can see, if we're talking about the color, for example, a design token could describe this heading and be named text primary. This could be text tertiary, for example. So you already implicate a certain hierarchy in your visual choices. All right, platform agnostic. That's really easy. I already showed you why it's platform agnostic. Design tokens are typically stored in JSON format, and they're typically hosted in a repository outside your specific tools or tech stacks. And that's really what I want to tell you about platform agnostic. We'll learn about that in the next slide. Because the really interesting part is design tokens are there to be shared across disciplines, tools, and technologies. Let's have a look at this graphics. So tokens actually travel through a pipeline. So they start as a small tech-agnostic piece of JSON file, and they got transformed along the way. There's a transformation process. Then they got distributed to your target platforms. And at the end, the transformation process guarantees that the target platform can consume the tokens. So For example, they start as JSON, then they got transformed, and they are a dependency for your web project, but the web project receives your tokens in a transformed way as custom properties, Sass, Less, JavaScript, TypeScript, whatever you need. So, but if you're working on a native app, you could probably get your tokens in XML or Swift. If you're working on a design system documentation, JSON might be the right choice. If you're working in design, you can also consume your tokens in a design tool like Figma or Penpot. So they start in an agnostic format, they get transformed along the way, and then you get a specific format for your target platform. And what this future here means, it really doesn't matter what target platform you're working on. So actually you can write your own transformers and you can transform your JSON to any conceivable format. So that's the journey design tokens take. And here you have an example. So, all right, you start with JSON. Here you got your transformation process. And in the end, what you get from this JSON is custom properties, you get TypeScript, you get Swift, and XML, all from the same source. And just by transforming these JSON-based tokens to another target format. This is Style Dictionary. It's probably the most popular solution for transforming your design tokens. Same here, you got a config in between, and in the end, the JSON, in this case, is being transformed to your CSS custom properties. I think there are more examples. Yeah, Figma variables is a native format. So Figma cannot consume tokens in their original JSON format. So, but there are ways with Token Studio plugin or the Figma REST API to sync tokens with Figma. And then there is Token Studio. I already mentioned that. This is a really nice plugin which you could use with Figma. And what this allows you is to actually sync your tokens from design to code and also from code to design. So actually a designer could change your core design decisions in a repository by just pushing a change to your repository from Figma, just by using this really nice plugin called Tokens Studio. And the other way around, it would also be possible. There are changes in your code, and they are, and Figma is just consuming these changes. So this is really a nice way to align development and design, and to also automate things, and also to empower designers, because now they can change the base, your core design decisions, and this will be distributed to all of your platforms if you set this up with automatization. All right, this is Penpot actually, and I mentioned this because it's a Figma alternative that has CSS, Grid, and Flexbox under the hood, and they will have native design token support very soon. It works with Style Dictionary from what I read, so it's definitely worth checking this out. I think it will be a really nice alternative to Figma, and it's free actually right now. This is Supernova. This is a tool for design system documentation. It can transform your design tokens, but it can also integrate your design tokens in your documentation if you document your design system. And this is Figma Slides, actually the tool I made this presentation with. And I mentioned this because also your marketing and sales departments can use design tokens in your presentation. So you can definitely sync a tool like Figma Slides with your design token source of truth. So also these departments could, you could update a whole set of slides in one go by just updating your token source of truth. All right, and last but not least, common vocabulary. So since all teams now refer to the same token source of truth, you establish a common vocabulary among departments and teams. You have a standardized set of naming conventions, and what we also get when I mention common vocabulary, if we name our tokens in a semantic way, we can also get a self-documenting resource actually, and have a token that already provides some information about the intended use case. And this may reduce miscommunication. Also, it may make onboarding easier. All right, what else? Okay, so tokens can have additional properties. So they can also have a type property, like color or typography. They can have a description, which is really great for documentation. There's a deprecated property, and there will be more. I think it's not final yet because the specs are still in the making. And then we have composite tokens, and this is really important if you're dealing with animation, shadows, but also typography, because typographic style wouldn't make sense if we just define a font size. We also need font family, letter spacing, line height, and stuff like that. So we can combine different values, so a token that is made up of multiple child values, and that's something we already know from, at least we already know this from word processing tools, so it's not new. Also, these tools combine typographic properties to one style. All right, and what really nailed it to me was this overview by Nathan Curtis. So what he did, he compared variables with tokens, and this was really insightful to me. So a variable is available in one format, whereas a token is available in many formats. A variable is reused by one team, a token by all teams. A variable is stored in a local place, whereas a token is stored in a central place. The variable is embedded in a team's product, whereas tokens are versioned independent from other products. And yeah, variables might be named chaotically, but tokens are named deliberately for scale. I will skip naming tokens as a topic today because it's complicated. You can do a nice team workshop if you're interested in naming tokens. But that's really a big topic, which we will skip today, just as a side note. Tokens in design systems. So I like to think about tokens in design systems as the glue that holds everything together. This is really a simplified version of a design system. Typically, you probably have more component libraries and more UI kits, but actually everything is referring to the same token source of truth. So your documentation, your component library in Storybook, for example, your UI kit in Figma or PenPod, and actually your final products, your web app, your native apps, your website for marketing purposes. The tokens are there to unite all these different artifacts. All right, I'll just show you some examples. So I would say design tokens, if you're working on design systems, most large companies who have a design system, they also have design tokens. So I would say there's almost no design system nowadays without design tokens. Here are a few examples. If you're looking for further inspiration, you can check these out. Atlassian, for example, have nice documentation about their usage of design token. Google Material, also interesting how they use it. Salesforce, Lightning Design System. We have GitHub Primer, we have Mozilla, and my favorite design system, I think, when having a look at the token side of things, is Shopify Polaris. All right, so this would be the basic chapter. There will be another chapter afterwards, but do you already have some questions here about, all right.
So, you already said that the standard is on the way. It's not there yet. Mm-hmm. So that means, correct me if I'm wrong, that the properties that you can write into this JSON are defined by the standard, and I cannot add any custom fields. So it is what it is, right?
You could use, there was another standard that was quite common, but I think actually all the solutions I see, they are more geared towards the upcoming standards. So I think it will be what I showed you with probably some tweaks, but I think you can come up with your own structure. It's definitely possible. You can just open a repository, come up with your own JSON file and write your transformer. And you could also write a Figma plugin. I just talked to someone who did this. So it's definitely possible. But I think I would really have a look at the current standard from the W3C group. And I think also Style Dictionary switched to this standard, and I think most players in the token world hope that this will be the official standard one day. Yeah, but you can use your own, you can come up with your own solution, but I wouldn't recommend it nowadays. Yeah.
May I have a quick follow-up? Now comes the interesting part, the transformer actually.
Yeah.
Is this something that's going to be part of a standard, and then you can just take the transformer and then you have most of the most used systems already ready for you, or this is going to be an open source fight about it, like JavaScript frameworks?
There are many choices. So you can choose Style Dictionary. So that's really flexible. It comes with presets that will work for some use cases. Then there will be tools like PenPod, and they will implement Style Dictionary, so you don't have to set up things manually. I think actually we could talk about code automatization, build pipelines, stuff like that, but I think this will be done for us by solutions in a few years from now. So right now you have to set up some things manually, but I don't think this will be the case in 3 years from now. But Style Dictionary is a choice, so you can use presets, but can come up with your own. You can buy a tool, subscribe to a tool like Supernova, which is really nice. And they also have presets for Tailwind, for example, for CSS, JavaScript, stuff like that, and for common frameworks. And what you get with Supernova is also design system documentation. You get this transformation, but actually you have to think about where your design token source of truth shall be. So some solutions require you to have your source in Figma. And I don't think that this is a sustainable way or a solution where your design tokens should live. So if you use a plugin like Token Studio, for example, you can sync to Figma. If you use Supernova, for example, I think until this day, you can only sync from Figma to code, which means that your source of truth is Figma. And you have to think about if you're comfortable with that. Yeah.
But you also prefer more the approach, there's a source code somewhere and then everybody else is speaking from that source, like GitHub or something.
I tend to prefer that nowadays. I was comfortable with the Figma way of doing things, but nowadays I think design tokens should really live outside an owned paid platform like Figma. It can be a golden cage, so if Figma updates the pricing again, it can be expensive. So I really think you should own your tokens and the repository where they live, and you should go for a solution where you could distribute your tokens from your owned source of truth.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Would it be recommended to build it that wide that you specify, for example, the button spacings combined with typography and sizes and everything to have one big merged token for buttons, or for example?
It can, and we will talk about this now because there will be different token sets. Generic ones, semantic ones, but also component level tokens. I will skip that mostly today, but for big projects you will have a component token set geared towards specific components. You could also have sets for iOS, another set for Android, another one for web. So that's where things get a little bit more complicated, depends on the size of your project. But probably that's a good clue for me to start the next topic, because we will talk about these token sets. I'll just mention the button topic in one slide, but yeah, you can have definitely a set for your button. If it's a big project, it can make sense. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, so there will be time for questions after the next chapter. All right, I called it aliasing. I could also have called it like, I don't know, theming or multi-brand theming, something like that. So it's all about how to scale different themes, or if you have sub-brands in your company, or if you're working for an agency actually and have many different clients, how you can create an infinite number of themes for as many projects as you like. So aliasing is probably a bit boring from a title point of view, but I hope you'll see the benefits here. So you can alias tokens, which basically means a token can reference another token instead of referencing a hard-coded value. So this token contains a hard-coded value. This token here, the text primary token, points to another token that actually contains the hard-coded color value. And this might look a bit boring in the beginning, and actually it's nothing exclusive to tokens. So actually we can do this in CSS. In any programming language, it's definitely not exclusive to design tokens, but I think design tokens teach this in a systematic way, how to use this in a systematic way. And we can also do this in Figma, for example. We can also add an alias between different variables. But in the token world, this is a whole new level, I think, because now we can manage multiple themes across many different platforms. And that's the real power, I think, when we talk about design tokens. So let's start here with options. You might be familiar with these color ramps in some projects or design systems. You would define all of these different colors, these color ramps, and I would consider these as our available options. And here's a simplified version. This would also be all of our available indigo color options, but some of them have a more prominent role. These are our choices. So for example, this single value might be our accent color. And that's why I probably want to name it like that. Let's have a look at the slate color palette. So some of these slate color tones have a more prominent role. For example, slate 100 might be our text primary, slate 200 text secondary, slate 400 text tertiary, and so on. We might also have specific values for our background color. So some colors have a prominent role here in our design. And in the design token world, our options can be called generic tokens, the set of tokens that contain all of our options. And the choices could be called semantic tokens. We'll have a look at how this works in this graphic. So we need to start at the right side actually here. So if you have a look at this card UI. So you have a heading here that is almost white. And this card heading's color is based on the text primary token, which is a semantic token because it has a semantic name that provides some meaning. It speaks to us. And this semantic token points to the slate 100 token, which is a generic token that is part of our generic color palette. Same is true here for our body color of the card. So this is probably called text secondary. So I made up this name, so it could also be called text muted, text body. It's just something I prefer to call it. You could also call it FG secondary, for example. But this text secondary is an alias that points to the slate 200 generic token. Same is true here for the background. I might call this BG secondary, and it points to our slate 900 token. And that's what I just mentioned. So the component, the button would be a component token. And that's where things start to get a little bit more complicated. So today we just talk about generic and semantic tokens. But in the token world, we typically have different levels or tiers of tokens. We start with generic tokens, but we don't use these in our design. I will show you why in a moment. And then we have semantic tokens. That's what we would use for theming. That's what we use in our actual designs. And probably if it's a complex project or we have many different platforms to target, we might also have component level tokens. Okay, so And the most confusing thing here is when I say generic token and semantic token, these names are, no one agreed on these names. So actually there are many synonyms. So a generic token sometimes is called global token, option token, core token, base token, fundamental token, definition token, primitives in Figma, reference token, as Google Material calls them, and Brad Frost says tier 1 token. The semantic token, I think this is almost a common term, semantic token, but also you will find alias token, decision token, theme token, system token, and tier 2 token. So that makes it a little bit complicated. So when I say generic token, I mean the first level, all your options, and when I say semantic tokens, I mean actually the tokens that provide semantic meaning and that you will actually use in your code and design as well. And yeah, here's, this is from Adobe Spectrum, and this is important. So actually, you should not use, this is my recommendation, the generic tokens in your design. I will show you why in a moment. And I think there will be a slide here. Is any one of you using Tailwind right now? Yeah? All right. Like half of you. All right. Because Tailwind actually, they prefer generic names. They prefer generic names over semantic ones. And this might be okay if you just have a dark or a light mode you need to support. But you really, if you want to support multiple brands, or you're an agency and want to craft many different themes for many different clients, I think it's really not that elegant to work with generic names like these different scales here, because it can get confusing and no one actually can remember after a few months if this was your brand's main color or the 500 one, probably. So, but there's a fix. There's a free tutorial available on Epic Web Dev. It shows you how you can fix that in Tailwind 3 and 4. And you can come up with your own semantic layer in Tailwind. All right, but probably this is a little bit abstract here. So let's have a look at some examples. So let's imagine you have this website UI, and you were given the task to create a dark mode, for example, for this. And now I will switch, and you can have a look at these. It's just a selection of tokens at these tokens. Now I switch to dark. So, and as you can see, these tokens stay consistent. They don't change. What this means is you can have the same markup and an infinite number of themes. So really, the markup and also your classes and everything can stay the same, and you can create an infinite number of themes or designs for your sub-brands just from your global token source of truth. There are other examples here. This one, for example, once again, the semantic tokens stay consistent. You don't need to change them. If the system is good enough, you can live with it for years, I would say. This is just about colors, but a more interesting example, all right, here, this is by Supernova, where you can see it's not only about color, also the border radius changes, but the semantic names here stay the same, actually. And this example is by Brad Frost. I think he is one of the most experienced design system experts when we talk about themable design systems. So here he shows a design system he made for Condé Nast, I think, and he toggles between all the different sub-brands, different magazines, and the magic behind this is the markup is exactly the same. He realized it by just changing the token source, and he didn't touch the markup. And to make it more concrete, another example by Brad Frost. By the way, this talk is available on YouTube. He gave it for Smashing Conference in San Francisco like 2 or 3 years ago. And here he also toggles between the different sub-brands, completely different typography, different colors, but the same markup. And you can imagine that this saves a lot of time, especially when working on big project with multiple sub-brands, but also when working for an agency with different clients. So that's really the power when using aliasing combined with a global token source of truth. And this is an example, I think it's 3 years old when I gave this talk the first time. I made this with, this is actually an older version of the plugin Token Studio. So as you can see also in Figma, I just toggle different themes. I don't ever need to change the design in Figma again. I just add my theme layer and I can create completely unique designs here. That is definitely a big time saver. All right, so aliasing use cases. So modes, as I already mentioned, so you can create a dark mode, but also a high contrast mode, for example. It's great for theming. One base, an infinite number of themes. It's great if you work at a company or on projects for a company with multiple brands. It's great for white labeling. So if your clients, if you have a solution where clients can craft their own themes, but also for internationalization, when you want to adapt your design to cultural preferences, for example, you just have another token set for a different target audience. But also for accessibility. You could create an alias set for a different accessibility need, for example. That's also another use case of aliasing. All right. So, and that's already the final evaluation where I try to sum everything up in a few slides. So let's see. That's where we started. So plain HTML, we needed to style our documents inside the HTML. Then we could control our design decisions from CSS. So that was a huge win, but we still had raw values. Then we got variables in CSS. And now we could name our design decisions. That was also a huge win, but still this is only possible in one platform. When I'm talking about CSS, I'm mostly talking about websites. And design tokens actually, with design tokens, the control over our design decisions is taken out of an individual tool or tech stack. And the true benefit of design tokens is not if we're working on one platform, on one channel. It's really if I want to distribute my design decisions from one global source of truth to many different tools, teams, and stacks. All right, so how did we achieve that? Now we shifted the responsibility to a platform-agnostic source outside our individual stack, and we now share our design decisions across teams, tools, and platforms. The benefits are, from a developer's experience point of view, scalability. So you can scale your design to new tools and platforms. Efficiency, you can now control your design decisions on a single point and distribute it to multiple channels. You gain flexibility because you can change just your global tokens and you don't have to change the markup that often. Improved collaboration. This is an important one due to the shared vocabulary, the common language. And there might be more time for feature development in the end, hopefully. From a user's point of view, you could get more consistency, actually, if less manual work is involved and you automatically sync everything. Everyone speaks the same language. This reduces the chance for misunderstandings. And they might experience at least better product or more features since the developers might have more time. This is mostly true for big projects with multiple brands and themes. All right, and that's exactly what Spotify did. So nowadays, all of their different design systems are connected with design tokens. So that's actually the common base of all of their design systems. And if there was the need to change the Spotify green to blue, it would be really easy because they could control it from that one source of truth, and it would be distributed to all of their different design systems. All right. But still, there are some drawbacks. So to be clear about that, there's no official standard. That could be a drawback right now. There's an added complexity. So if you're working, you just have a marketing site, an app, and Figma, probably for a small project, this is over-engineering. So I'm a big fan of progressive enhancement, and I think if it's not really required, and that's the last point here, how often do you really update your core design decisions? So this change from a warmer green tone to a cooler one would happen every 5 years maybe. So, and if you only have a few stacks and one team, probably it's overkill. So that's also a thing to mention. But still then, design tokens can teach you about how to semantically name your design decisions, even if you're working just in plain CSS, and also how to systematically approach your design. That's really something you can learn from design tokens literature and tutorials. All right. Other drawbacks, naming is hard. I skipped that today. You can do workshops with your team. There are nice examples. Nathan Curtis actually is the expert here. He has many free articles on Medium about naming tokens. And actually, I had a tips and tool parts here, but since we don't have that much time, I will share that after the talk, and you will get a link, and then you can get all the tips and resources after the talk. I will skip that today. All right, another drawback, some popular frameworks like Tailwind prefer generic names, so you have to add your own semantic layer on top of it. And then, this is definitely an issue, distributing tokens to third-party or even legacy platforms may be really hard or even impossible. So if there's no way to inject your own CSS or to adjust the markup, or if there's no API, you have no chance actually to get your design tokens into that third-party platform. That's an issue. And that's also an issue. Some designers maybe feel limited in their creativity by design tokens. So because everything is set up, everything is defined, it's named, so maybe they feel limited. And I want to close the talk, with the human aspect. So that's Yesenia Perez-Cruz. She was working at Shopify and responsible for the Polaris design system. And she said the human aspects of your system are more complicated than the tooling. I can definitely confirm that. So spend more time on creating a shared language and less time on tools. And that's how I like to look on design tokens. So I really think they're an invitation to developers and designers to work more closely together, to not work in silos, to learn from each other. And the last one is also important to me. So really, we talk a lot about processes and tools, but actually the exchange between people and the interactions are definitely way more important here, more important than the tech, than the build pipelines and stuff like that. So that's my final conclusion here. So work together and talk to each other frequently. All right, that's it. And we have time for
questions.
So you mentioned aliases. For example, if you want to alias color, font face, or font size, for example, and color exists in maybe 2 different sort of namespaces, for example.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend every token. I skipped naming today, but definitely you need a namespace, especially if you're dealing with third-party platforms. The first thing would be add a namespace to your design token, actually. But you can automate this. So I'm not sure if I got the slides here. Let me have a look. I have a slide here. No, that's the bonus chapter. We don't talk about that today. I don't have a slide here today, no. But actually, you can come up with a Google spreadsheet or an A-table when you name your tokens, and you can just automate the prefix for your design tokens, or the namespace, probably a short abbreviation for your company name or something like that, or for your design system. And you can just create a function and just fill in the interesting parts where you really have discussions with your team how to name that. But everything else, like the type, you would typically also add the type, color, type, typography, stuff like that in your token name. But it's really not interesting to add this manually. So we would automate this with Airtable or Google Spreadsheets, for example, and just discuss the interesting parts in the end. But I'm not sure if I understand all parts of your question, but yeah, definitely colors, but also other tokens need a namespace in the beginning. And you could also think about like prefixing it with whether it's a generic palette color token or semantic one. So, and it can get really long. I had the screenshot here in, but I thought it's too long for today. But Nathan Curtis is the expert. He has really nice articles about naming tokens. And actually, the final name of a design token, a semantic one, will be quite long. It will have 8 different parts maybe, and it starts with a namespace. And then what type it is, and what purpose it has. Then in the end, you will have a scale. You will have different tokens for states, for example. So it's a really long topic, and I hosted some workshops on that topic. And turns out people are excited in the beginning about naming tokens. I am still excited about it. But actually, session 2, half of the team says, can you do it without me today? Because I have some other important stuff to do, and the core team members will figure it out with you. And that's also what other people said. So naming is not too exciting for many people. And the crowd gets smaller when you do a workshop, but actually you need some interdisciplinary team to discuss the naming at least. And yeah, you need to bring together different stakeholders and discuss it at least. And to make it a little bit more fun in the workshop maybe than the topic itself would be, yeah.
Yeah, and on that, do you have like issues with passing your JSON? Because if you have all these very long names and they extend beyond the certain name length, do your transformers have performance issues passing it down? Because sometimes you would need to transform them into perhaps TypeScript, XML, or maybe different formats required by different systems.
I can mostly speak about web. So you mean the transformation process itself or the final result?
The JSON format, for example,
Yeah.
is known to have issues in if it's based on its size, for example. If you have to transform it, I suppose, I don't know what the transformation entails, but...
Yeah, it's definitely not real time. So
Okay.
I dealt with different sources and I never had that issues. But to be honest, I've been working on token sources for 1.5 years now, and I never had a performance issues. But these companies had probably like 12 different themes, maybe, not more, and only probably 3 or 4 different target formats they required. So I didn't have these kind of bottlenecks. What I can say, another issue is you don't want to type these long names. So what's really nice with Tailwind, for example, again, this will work out of the box. So you will get your long names suggested by IntelliSense, and you don't have to type this. So that's something you get almost for free when you set up semantic tokens with Tailwind. So that's another nice aspect of you don't really have to deal with the long names in the end. You can use like a auto-suggest way in your code editor. Yeah. But there may be I'm not aware of it, but it's an interesting question. So I can check this up if I know people who had this. Yeah.
Thank you.
More questions?
About the structure of generic tokens and semantic tokens. If the tokens are stored in a JSON, do you reference them in different files? For example, I have generic ones in one file and semantic tokens in another that references this JSON, or would that be possible or testable?
I would say so. It really, there are so many different solutions that take charge of this. So many solutions I use already have taken care of things like that under the hood, like Supernova, for example. So they have settings for transforming tokens, and you just pick a setup of your choice, and the magic will be done for you without the need for manual adjustment. But I have to say, I'm not I don't like tweaking build pipelines, setting up node modules. I'm a front-end developer. So I focus on UIs, usability, scalability, performance, accessibility, stuff like that. So I really don't like to tweak those things behind the curtains. But you can cross-reference different files, and you can point from one generic set to a semantic set. But there are many different ways. You can pick up a solution that takes care of this. But you can definitely also set this up using something like Style Dictionary, for example, creating your own repository and pointing from one source to another one, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, let's talk a bit about accessibility and theming.
Yeah.
So let's say we want to make sure that the color contrast is always okay. So for example, you have some text colors, some background colors. You want to make sure they fit. I guess this is when composite tokens come into play, right? You would build up a composite token for which foreground goes with which background color and stuff like this also.
I haven't seen this example. What I see all the time is you have on tokens. So you have a dedicated token when you use a certain color on another color. So I hope in CSS, I think we'll get a solution, a native solution, where CSS just figures out if the contrast is okay, and you can you get an alternative color automatically from CSS. You can, I think, just give, I don't know, I think it's a CSS color function that we will get.
Rudimentary.
I'm really looking forward to this. But in the token world, what I see most of the time, probably you have this indigo color and you use it as a button background color. Then you would have another on accent token, for example, and that on implicates that you're using it on the other color. And then you have some linting processes. You can have some other code optimization, linting, testing, stuff like that. You can set it up. Romina Kavcic, actually, she will have a token course. I will share this within my resources. And she's really an expert with all these token pipelines and build optimization. And you can bake in some kind of testing if it's accessible or not, based probably on this on naming convention. But I use this combination. So I have background tokens and then I have on tokens that implicate that I use it on a certain background color. And I have
So
these
this would be like text on bright background or something like this. So
could be, but
tokens that you tell, okay, this is primary on bright or primary on dark.
I wouldn't use bright and dark. You could, but I would rather use because then you can't switch it. So I would rather use something like primary, secondary, tertiary, or something like where prominence plays a role. Probably it's not always that easy. It's really complicated in some cases, but yeah. Light and dark means you're probably already too fixed with your decision because you want to create an infinite number of themes maybe, and then you would come up with a more generic semantic token architecture, which sounds strange, generic semantic token architecture, but you would come up with a system that scales to other use cases besides light and dark, also high contrast, for example, or funky, geeky theme for your spring sale event or something like that. Yeah, that's another use case. And if you have sale events and dedicated landing pages, can create a theme for your landing page, for your sales offering, and just create this, just by reassigning tokens, actually, yeah.
All right. The answer opened up many more questions.
Yeah, go for it, or other, yeah.
Not for now.
Oh yeah, next question.
Are there any rumors, or even better, experiments from the browsers, Chrome, Mozilla, direction? There's this new wave of old ideas of web, for example, from the Ruby on Rails community, HTMX these days, no-build JavaScript, no nonsense. So are there any ideas already, like I can have like a link for CSS that can be token or couple of tokens, and then that browser can prepare that for CSS to read it automatically? You understand what I mean?
Yeah, I understand. That would be nice, kind of a native token support right within the browser, yeah.
So no build, the transformer would be part of the browser. That's what I'm thinking now.
Yeah. I know that actually browser vendors and also some really smart CSS wizards are part of the design token community group. So they might be thinking in a direction like that, but I'm not aware of any rumors about that. Today, I think the idea is still, you got your agnostic JSON source and the target format doesn't matter. But yeah, you need to transform the token if you're working on the web, and that's
that means
for
transpiling.
For small projects, you need time to set this up, and probably if you automate everything and have a sophisticated build pipeline, who will understand this 3 years from now? So it would be for small projects, yeah, some native solution. But it's really an interesting topic to think about. I never thought about it, to be honest, but I will do so.
Please do.
And next time I properly, sorted my thoughts about this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great inspiration, yeah.